Warfare in Europe and Africa. So we have this sort of truce between the United States, Great Britain, and the Soviet Union at this time. But what about actual fighting? So we're going to see that the United States really enters in like the ground war through Operation Torch. This is going to be in North Africa specifically, and American troops are going to be under the control of General Dwight Eisenhower. And I mentioned his name because he is a future president of the United States. Now, when they landed, they're actually going to face very little opposition, but soon they are going to meet up with German troops, and basically they're going to be taught some hard lessons in tactics and leadership. But despite this, the United States troops will prevail, and basically by May of 1943, Africa is in Allied hands. However, as much as the Allies have now taken North Africa, they need to move further north into Europe. And so this is when you get the invasion of Italy. Really, the central Mediterranean is going to remain the focus of the United States and Great Britain for the next year. A lot of this was because, as much as they had promised that they were going to invade, like through Normandy and everything like that, and eventually that will happen, Great Britain especially feared military disaster if they prematurely landed across the English Channel. And so they're going to try to take out Italy kind of first and gain momentum from there. And so Allied forces are going to be able to overrun Sicily in July and August of 1943. And so you can see that on that island right there. And when Sicily fell, basically the Italian king and the army are going to force Mussolini from power and begin to negotiate peace specifically with Great Britain and the United States. No, not the Soviet Union. So now we have this armistice with Italy. However, that doesn't actually mean that Allies control Italy. When Eisenhower's troops landed south of Naples in September, Germany still occupied the rest of Italy. And so the Italian campaigns are going to soak up a lot of Allied resources. Basically, there's a long series of defensive positions that the Germans have occupied. And so basically the Allies are repeatedly bogged down. However, simultaneously while this is going on, we have the Eastern Front and the Soviet Union versus Germany. And so this is when the Soviet Union is recruiting, rearming, upgrading their new armies. They're learning how to outfight Germany when it comes to tank warfare specifically. This is when they had rebuilt a lot of those munition factories and such. Plus, on top of that, they're going to use the United States Lend-Lease program. Yeah, remember how we lend articles to Great Britain? We're also going to do that with the Soviet Union. All of this is going to end up with the climatic battle of Germany versus the Soviet Union in the Battle of Kursk. This is on July 5th of 1943, and Kursk really was the largest pitched battle of the entire war, and it actually was the last great German offensive, not that we knew that at the time. And this finally brings us to D-Day. D-Day is on June 6th, 1944, when we see American, British, and Canadian forces are going to land on the coast of Normandy in northwestern France. And this is going to really be the largest amphibious operation ever staged. We're going to see 6 different divisions with hundreds of attack transports carrying about 4,000 landing craft, dozens of warships, and on top of that, 12,000 aircraft are going to provide support for all of these soldiers landing. This is definitely going to satisfy the Soviet Union's demands for a more balanced war effort. It is limited in its success at first. Basically, Germany is going to keep the Allies pinned for weeks along a narrow coastal strip, basically up in Normandy. But the entire campaign across the northern France, which codename is Operation Overlord, is going to eventually meet success in late July and August. Basically, they're going to improve their skills through experience and break through the German lines, specifically at the town of St. Lo. And then they would draw a ring around Germans who had lost 250,000 troops. And at this point, Germany kind of has to pull back. And when they decide to pull back and regroup, they decided to do this in Germany rather than in France. And so this means the Allies will liberate Paris by August 26th, actually 25th. We see actually Free French forces are leading this entry into Paris. So this drive into Germany after coming through France is really going to be the largest United States operation of the war. Simultaneously, from the eastern side, we get the Eastern Front. The Soviet Union has battered section of Germans one after the other and are entering the Balkans by the end of 1944. Which brings us to other parts of the war. The thing is, it's not just ground troops that are waging war. We're going to also see massive airstrikes throughout the war as well, but specifically more so in 1944. And these airstrikes were predominantly about reducing the German war production. So we're going to see like the United States flies daylight raids with like armed B-17s and B-24s. And specifically, they were trying to destroy factories by bombing these factories. Although about 19% of these American planes will be damaged or shot down by the Germans. And so we're seeing this balance shift because all of these bombing raids basically on like railroads and oil facilities, that's going to be twofold because on one hand, it's going to cripple the German economy. So that's affecting a lot of the civilian population particularly. And then it's also cutting the Germans' military production by about 1/3 and destroying their transportation system, which very much affects their ability to effectively wage war. We are going to see Hitler does try to strike one last blow, launching a 25 division against a thinly held United States position in Belgium in December of 1944. For a time, they'll capture a port at Antwerp. Americans are going to take casualties, but we basically see the German side runs out of gas, literally. Disrupting economic supplies can reduce your ability to effectively wage war. And that's what happened. As much as they had this one last strike, really, this never seriously threatened the outcome of the war, which is why the following actions are so controversial. The thing is, by that point, it was pretty clear the Allied side was being able to defeat Germany. And yet, in February of 1945, Great Britain and the United States have bombers attack the historic city of Dresden, and this kills 25,000 people, and a lot of them were specifically civilian refugees. Now, admittedly, Dresden did have like suburban factories that were producing military supplies, plus it was a junction of major like rail and telephone lines. And so this disruption creates just another obstacle to the German resistance. But there's this question, especially after the fact, that wasn't really necessary for them to bomb Dresden as much as they did. On one hand, it could have been, punishing the Germany. On the other hand, you could say that's part of war. And then there's also this question of it might have been a political gesture on some level, not aimed towards Germany, but actually aimed towards the Soviet Union. The reason is the Soviet Union's army was basically less than 100 miles to Berlin at that point, whereas the United States and Great Britain were nowhere near as close. And so there's this element of it might have been a show of force kind of trying to intimidate the Soviet Union to slow down until the United States and Great Britain could catch up, or on some level, they're using that kind of firepower so that they could catch up quicker, because there was this element of they didn't want the Soviet Union to be the predominant only group coming into Germany. Still, we see the Nazi Empire collapsing in the spring of 1945. We'll see American and Soviet troops meet up on the Elbe River on April 25th of that year. Hitler will then commit suicide on April 30th in a concrete bunker deep underneath devastated Berlin, which would officially surrender to the Soviet Union on May 2nd. And so we see the Nazi state formally capitulate on May 8th of 1945. So, looking at World War II and Europe specifically, how could you compare World War II to any modern wars at home or abroad?